and welcome back. Tom in Marshall, North Carolina. Hey, Tom, thanks for watching Free Speech on the Dish Network. What's on your mind?
I want to ask you, of all the policies that have been passed in this country and signed by presidents in the last, say, 35, 40 years, what one would you say was detrimental to the U.S.?
Forgive my sneeze. I think the policy that has been passed in the last, I don't know how many years it is, since 1976, it might be more than 35, it might be more like 40-something. In fact, I think it's probably 70, 80, 90, it's like 40 years. But the most destructive was a Supreme Court decision, actually, not a law that was passed by Congress. And it was in 1976, and it was the logical culmination of the Powell memo. And in fact, it was a Supreme Court decision in part authored by Lewis Powell, and it was called Buckley versus Vallejo. From the George Washington administration until 1976, under law, if you gave money to a politician, to a political party, to to buy advertising to promote a particular cause, a particular politician, a particular policy, a particular law, any of that, that was all considered a behavior which could be regulated by law. And so when Richard Nixon's corruption became so obvious in the early 1970s, Congress passed a whole series of laws regulating the amount of money that was running around Washington, D.C., which was a good thing. And a lot of state houses were doing the same thing all across the country. When Buckley was decided by the Supreme Court, what the Supreme Court decided, and this was, Lewis Powell, corporate attorney, he's the one who wrote the memo in 1971 saying corporations have to stop being non-political and start buying politicians. Well, back then in 1971, when he wrote that memo to the Chamber of Commerce, it was largely illegal or difficult. In 1976, the Supreme Court said buying politicians or advocating for political positions, and we're going to talk about this with the GMO labeling bill in about an hour from now, by doing that is no longer considered a behavior that can be regulated by Congress. It cannot be regulated by Congress. It can't be stopped by Congress. It is First Amendment protected free speech. And that then led to the buying of our politicians and the intimidating of our politicians by groups from the NRA and Big Pharma, the gun industry, the pesticide industry, the fossil fuel industry, pretty much all of the ills in America right now that are the result of the failure of government to regulate appropriately are the result of that Supreme Court decision, Buckley in 1976. And if there's anything that needs to be reversed, it's that. And that's movetoamend.org. They're working to reverse basically two doctrines. That, the Buckley case in 1976, to say, no, I'm sorry, giving money to politicians is not constitutionally protected free speech. It is a behavior and it can be regulated, number one. And number two, back in 1886, in a case called Santa Clara County versus Southern Pacific Railroad, the Supreme Court did not rule that corporations are people, but the clerk of the court wrote that they ruled that. And the court ever since then has pointed to the clerk's notes and said corporations are people. And so we need to reverse both of those policies, and that's what movetoamend.org is all about. Once you do that, then Congress is freed from corporate influence and billionaire influence, and they can start passing some laws and undoing some of these terrible policies. Tom, thanks for the call. We'll be right back.
To watch more clips from our programs, hit the Watch More Videos button over here. And please be sure to hit the handy-dandy subscribe button so you'll always be up to date. Tag, you're it.